नमस्कार दोस्तों, welcome you all in Humanities Gurukul, your one-stop solution for social studies. So yesterday in last lecture, we just finished till periodization. Like we discussed about what is periodization, then different aspect, we and different approach. We discuss about the colonial approach and at the same time modern approach. Now, for basic understanding, so your this book is basically dealing with the colonial rule and its consequences, right? So it is very important to know about what is colonial. So what happened? So when European trading group they started expanding for trading purposes, right? So eventually they may end up making colonies. Colonies means source from where they can procure their raw material at the same time they can sell their product, their machine made product. So colonies main intention was to exploit for their own benefit. So, establishment of British rule followed by economic and social exploitation. So, with the establishment of colonial rule, so various change was witnessed in context of Indian society, like values changes, like values, taste, customs, practices. So, simple colonization means subjugation of colonies, leading to leading to political, economic, social, and cultural changes. And if we see the consequences, so it was simply the lack of equality, then freedom, then economic development. So obviously their main motive was just to exploit the colonies. So why they will think about colonies, right? So if you can see in the textbook, so collected revenue to meet their all expenses, pot the good. So what they are doing? So the revenue which they are extracting. So with that revenue only they are paying for trade and other expenses. Then if you see further, so I have already discussed about the changes in values, taste, custom, practices, right? And all these things, subjugation lead to political, economic, social, cultural changes. Now, one very important question you will ask that how do we know about all these things? Obviously, I discussed in last lecture that history, when backed up by some sort of evidences or sources, then it becomes somewhat valid. So without evidences, history is just a story, right? So under British rule, what happened? Under British rule, so great emphasis was on documentation. Why it is important? Documentation. because it is keeping the records of policies, decisions. So one of the most important was administrative record. So because of this, what happened, the culture of producing memos, then notings and reports. And these are somewhat preserved. Why? Because these were important document having important datas and figures. So these were preserved in some record rooms such as village tehsildar offices, then collectorate and all. And then it eventually led to the coming up of archives and museum. Just to link it properly, so link this archives and museum in your present context. So why we go to museum? Why? Because it has preserved something which was of past, which has some relevance, right? So in similar way, these things were developed just to keep the documents safe. Then in this period also, what happened, development of calligraphy and printing. Why? Because what happened, in initially, like early 19th century, early 19th century, eh, early 19th century, documents were copied. So hand written, hand copied, hand copied. But by mid of 19th century, with the growth in technology and some enhancement, so printing technique came. Printing technique. So it just helped a lot. Why? Because it allowed multiple copies so that you can keep the record safe in some proper way, right? Then if we move further, then the next topic is surveys. So that this basic words itself say about survey, that survey is something when we just collect the data for some particular information, right? So if we discuss the role of surveys, and it became very important in during British rule. Why? Because they started with a motive to understand more about our country, and they believed that it is important to understand the country's country's information information which will eventually help them in effective administration. So for this purpose, what happened, early 19th century, so detailed revenue survey and topographical mapping topographical mapping were conducted just to get detail about the land resources. So that they could use this land in some very proper way for their revenue collection. Then one important and landmark improvement in this period was census. So Britishers they begin the census in every 10 years, and now also it is being conducted. So why it is important? So it will give you the aggregate data of 1 decade, so that it will help you in your policy making. So it held every 10 years. This you all know. So what it does, it record population data along with caste, religion, and occupation. See, I told you why it is important. It will help you in some policy making, mostly used by government. Then other surveys also carried on, like botanical, then then geological, archaeological, and all, and along with that, forest survey. So all this survey is important to know about the country. Why? Because if you have to rule on some particular area, on some particular land or any country, so before that you should know every detail about that country in terms of their population, then caste, then this land record, then forest report. It will help them to administer the country in somewhat better way. So so obviously these officials record are very important, but they also have some loopholes. Loopholes or some cons. So what are these? So name itself suggests official record. So official records are somewhat limited to official interest and thoughts. Officials, their interest and views. So they just conserve, they just preserve what they feel important, preserve what they consider important for them. Like mostly about this population, then caste, religion, occupation, then revenue surveys and topography. So whatever they felt that it will help them to rule more smoothly. And but in this case, what happened that it excluded the marginalized marginalized sections or groups like tribals, then peasants. So it is somewhat ignoring the sentiments of general population. I told you it is all about your focus in history, which is important. So they primarily focuses on the political, then administrative history, and at the same along with this population data, then caste. So whatever could have helped them, and they end up ignoring the general population. So just to fill this gap, we have alternate source includes diaries, then autobiographies, then booklets, newspaper, etc. So why these are important? These are not official document. These are view of some certain some individual or some group organization. So they'll tell you something which is not mentioned in the official record. Why? Because they'll tell you the real history or real sentiment or maybe somewhat negative. image of government. So they give insight into public opinion and popular sentiments. Whatever books written by revolutionaries. So these will come under all this. Why? Because they somewhat showed the real face of that time. So if we are saying that we have official record as well as alternative sources, so why these are important? Because if we are exploring the wide range of material, so it will help us to understand, or it these are very crucial for comprehensive comprehensive understanding of event which took at that point of time. And at the same time it will help you to compare the social history or political history or other dimension of the society of that context. So we shall take up the next discussion in next class. Thank you so much.